Televisions, mobile phones, video cameras, they've all gone digital. Now radio is getting ready to do just that. With over 110 million Europeans listening to the radio every day for about 3 hours or more, according to the European Broadcasting Union, the switchover is likely to affect us all. With that in mind, the European United Left group here in the European Parliament organised a hearing on the topic this week to tackle the main challenges that this switchover will bring, especially for community radios. So before we kick off, I would like to welcome our guests. We've got GUI MEP here today, Marisa Matias from Portugal. We've got the Green MEP from the Swedish Pirate Party, Amelia Andersdotter. And we have Emmanuel Bouturon, the Vice President of AMARC, Europe, the World Association of Community Radio Broadcasters, and Peter de Wit, the President of the Community Media Forum Europe. So thank you very much for coming today to give us a bit of a synopsis of this conference, because of course the viewers, you can't be here with us, so we're going to give you a glimpse of it. So we're ready to go from analogue to digital. It was meant to be 2015. Experts are telling us now that it could be 2019. Can you tell us a bit about this first and tell us what effect this will have on radio, community radios? Avec vous, on va parler en français.
Je vous remercie infiniment. La radio communautaire, c'est une radio locale, une radio qui remplit une mission de communication sociale de proximité sur un territoire. Elle a une zone de diffusion locale, mais elle s'adresse à tout le monde sur son territoire et elle rend des services aux auditrices et aux auditeurs. Et l'Association mondiale des radios communautaires est une ONG, une organisation internationale, la seule organisation internationale qui regroupe les experts et les praticiens des radios associatives et communautaires, puisque dans certains pays nous disons associatives et dans d'autres community media.
OK, we'll come back to you just in a minute. But can you tell us, Peter, why exactly are we here? I mean, the European Union has absolutely no policy on radio broadcasting. Why have you come today?
Yes, that's a good question. But the European Union has a lot of policy items that affect radio. For example, media pluralism, the frequency policy, digitalization, digital agenda from meneer De Cruz, etc. So these policy areas affect radio, and so we should be here to make our case for community radio.
So what is your message? How can you help him? I mean, what is the Parliament doing at the moment to help these guys?
The European Parliament and the European Commission just developed a spectrum allocation program for Europe in order to better harmonize the spectrum allocation in especially border areas. I don't think actually there's currently many things in the European policies that will have a big effect on the ability of member states to have community radio policies. So one of the concerns for the past 2 decades, I think, has been changing of broadcasting standards. But we're not really seeing this so much in radio as we've seen it in TV. And in the debates, it also seems the FM band in particular is quite narrow. So it's not really very interesting for wireless networks, which has otherwise been a huge issue for the television broadcasting bands. Of course, I see a lot of potential for the European Union to develop media diversity, and this is a very important thing that we guard this in the member states. The recent developments, for instance, in the Netherlands, shows that there is some lack of concern for policymakers in promoting, for instance, community TV and other type of non-commercial broadcasting projects. But there's nothing currently that stops us.
What effect will this have on consumers? Do you think European consumers are ready for this switchover from analogue to digital?
Yes, we are talking about a switch over, of course, but it's not a technological one. It's a societal and a political one. So, of course, it will affect consumers, but it will depend on the line, on the orientation that will be guided towards this change, because we can talk about the digital spectrum and the role of the European Union on this, and of course that's it's the link between all of us here. But if we change the technology and we don't change the other policies, nothing will happen anyway, because the question is a question about the content, about the pluralism. about the way that these new technologies can make a political and societal and a cultural difference. In that sense, I think the main and major question that we are facing is the question of democracy, of pluralism, and of course a question of content. Because if we are doing all these changes and say, okay, we are dealing with the digital spectrum, we are dealing with something which is a public good. It's not something which is a private good, it's a public good. And as being a public good, we need to take into consideration that content is important, so we need diversity. And we need to take into consideration that also the operators are important, and not only the big companies and big ones, but also the local companies and the local radios, the local TVs, televisions, and that's the main issue we are dealing with. And in that sense, I would like to say that it's not only about digital spectrum as a public good and digital agenda, which is a new thing in the European agenda. It's not only about diversity and pluralism, but it's also about our capacity to include the different positions and the diversity. And this is a question of democracy, it's not a question of technology.
Absolutely. Okay. And what are the next steps then after today's conference? What do you envisage?
Yes, we are very happy with the motion from the European Parliament in 2008 on community media. And there are some recommendations in this motion, in this resolution, and we would like to build further on this resolution. We would like to evaluate if countries that are called to do all kinds of things for community media have done that, etc., etc. And based on these conclusions, we could ask the European Union, European Parliament, to implement next steps to help the community media sector also taking part of the digital era.
And Emmanuel, tell us about your speech that you'll give today in the Parliament. What will be your message? C'est quoi en fait ce que vous voulez dire?
Oui, c'est très important et je suis très heureux que le groupe parlementaire Gauche Unie Européenne se saisisse de cette situation et de cette initiative. Nous arrivons pour les médias communautaires, les médias locaux, à une révolution technologique. Et il ne faut pas que cette révolution technologique exclue les médias communautaires du spectre hertzien. C'est vrai que la tentation des grands groupes commerciaux et des télécommunications est de gagner le maximum de place sur le spectre. Et il est très important d'avoir des appuis de votre groupe parlementaire et de votre président Zimmer, et de telle façon à pouvoir faire avancer au plan européen une résolution, des engagements sur la place qui doit être sécurisée, une place sécuritaire pour les médias communautaires. C'est notre combat à la marque, au CMFE, et j'espère que ça sera le combat de votre groupe, bien évidemment, c'est ce que nous apprenons aujourd'hui, et merci encore, mais il faut que ça soit le combat de tout le Parlement si nous y arrivons ensemble.
Thank you very much. You're obviously very happy to be here in the European Parliament. We're going to have to leave it at that and invite our viewers watching on our Facebook stream to please leave us comments and ask us questions, and we will of course send them to our guests today. Thank you all very much for coming today, and thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.